Welcome to the Center for Sports Studies podcast. My name is Brandon Podgorski, professor of sport management at Trine University, and I want to welcome you to this week's podcast. This is a special episode of the podcast as we replay the talk from this year's featured speaker, Garrett Martz. Garrett is a 2004 marketing graduate from Trine, and he got his start in sports as an account representative with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. Although he did not see himself in a sales role, he thrived at selling a sport that he was passionate about, and he became the vice president of sales for the Mad Ants within 5 years. After the Mad Ants were sold to the Indiana Pacers, Garrett and the former ownership group of the Mad Ants launched Potter Sports Group, a sports agency focusing on professional basketball. As vice president of Potter Sports Group, Garrett is responsible for identifying and recruiting athletes to their agency. Although most of their athletes play in the G League or overseas, they recently had one of their athletes sign a 10-day NBA contract, and Garrett explains the process of trying to get players to the league. He also discusses the benefits and struggles of being a small firm and takes questions from students on sports agency and how to break into sports. I hope you enjoyed this episode. All right. Well, good afternoon. Most everybody here in this room knows me. I'm Brandon Podgorski, Associate Professor of Sport Management and Director of the Center for Sports Studies. We want to welcome you today in coordination with the Sport Management Club. This is part of our annual symposium that we do for the Center for Sports Studies. So this is our featured speaker this year. We've got the Vice President of Potter Sports Group joining us, Garrett Martz. I'm really excited to have Garrett here today. He's joining a list of past speakers here for the Center for Sports Studies. It includes Tim Ballman, who's the president of the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, and Garrett will talk about his experience with the Mad Ants today. Dr. Robert Philippi, who is Associate Commissioner of Conference USA, Steve Jabara, who was the owner of the G League's Grand Rapids Gold. And then last year we had Kurt Humphrey, who was the former CFO of the Indianapolis Colts. So we certainly appreciate Garrett coming all the way up from Fort Wayne to join us today. Before we begin, I kindly ask you mute your mobile devices so we don't distract others during the talk. At the end of the symposium, I know Garrett's going to talk about his experiences, and then he's going to open it up for Q&A. This is being recorded as part of the Center for Sports Studies podcast, and it'll be available on February 9th in all the podcasting platforms and YouTube. Just a little bit of background for Garrett. He's the vice president and partner of Potter Sports Group. He began his career in sports with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants as an account executive, and he quickly worked his way up in the company to become the vice president of sales and marketing for the Mad Ants. Under his leadership, the Mad Ants had record sales in all phases of the business: sponsorships, season tickets, group tickets, and individual tickets. Through his stewardship, the Mad Ants became a profitable venture for its owners, which is no small feat in the world of minor league basketball, baseball, just about anything in minor league sports. His love of basketball, it grew throughout his tenure with the Mad Ants, and he was able to make personal connections with a number of players. As a means to extend kind of the Mad Ants' reach during the summer months, he spearheaded the creating of the Mad Ants alumni team as part of the basketball tournament. And I'm sure he'll probably talk about that today, which I think is just kind of a great thing to have in the summer if you're kind of starved for basketball. So he's a graduate of Trine University, a 2004 marketing graduate, right, of Trine University. So I'm very excited to have him today. And a special thank you to Professor Steve Helm for contacting Garrett and inviting him here today. So Garrett, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. And you guys feel free to chime in with questions during it. This isn't really going to be anything formal. I'm just going to kind of give my background and how I got to where I am, and then we'll go from there. And I recognize a lot of the names. I actually worked with Tim Ballman for a couple of years. He actually fired me, which it wasn't a bad thing. It led to this, so it was good. But I'll talk to that when it gets to that part of the story. And then Steve Jabara, I know from he owns the Grand Rapids Gold, or as a part of the ownership group. And we used to work with him, obviously, when I was with the Mad Ants. We were in the same league there. But yeah, so my background, I actually went to high school in Angola, and then it was then Tri-State, now Trine, obviously, and then graduated in 2004. And when I was always kind of late to decide on things and not, I don't know, it wasn't planning for the future very well. So when I was in high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go to school, waited till the pretty last second, and then Tri-State just was offering at the time a lot of local scholarships and things, and just made sense. And I didn't really have any desire to go far away to school or anything. So I went to Trine and was trying to figure out what should my degree be. And I always liked kind of like marketing stuff, advertising, building an ad, how do you get people to buy something, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of pictured myself as what, if you ever watch Mad Men, like a modern version of that, of getting into that stuff. So I, took all the business classes, graduated with a marketing degree, and then I found that it's really hard to get your foot in the door of what the kind of thing I wanted to do within marketing. A lot of it was sales and that sort of thing, like sales and marketing. And I'm kind of an introverted person. I've kind of gotten over that to somewhat, but making 60 cold calls is not something really probably anyone wants to do, but especially I didn't want to do. But I loved basketball, and I had gotten like it was a somewhat full-time, but mostly it was a startup company that my friend's parents had started. Made parts for RVs, and that's what I did right after college. And I was helping with some of the sales and marketing with them, but again, not really what I wanted to do. So I did that for a little bit, and then in 2007, found out the Fort Wayne Mad Ants were starting at the Coliseum in Fort Wayne, and I was a huge NBA fan. Just seemed like the perfect fit. Called, emailed, got an interview with the president, Jeff Potter, and I just remember going through like this interview process for I think I came in like 3 times. I interviewed with different people, and I was like, are they going to hire me or what? What's going on? And I think they even kind of was like, we're not going to bring you in right now. Maybe something will open up. And they finally get the call like, hey, we'd like to bring you in. We are going to hire you. I was like, great, awesome. So what ended up happening, I found out later, was in April of 2007, they'd hired all these veteran salespeople. So like people in their 30s, 40s that had lots of experience in sales in Fort Wayne. And it just wasn't working out because they were just very lazy, kind of not being active, not getting after it. So Jeff had like fired the whole sales staff except for one person. And then I was part of the new class of people, which was mostly people pretty fresh out of college, or like me that maybe had a little experience out of college. And I became an account executive there. And my responsibilities then, it was mostly starting off season ticket sales and sponsorships, and then eventually started selling group tickets that year as well. And just to kind of give you a breakdown, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with this, but I feel like I was very ignorant of it going in, was, what kind of fills each of those buckets. Season tickets, obviously that's where you want someone, if they're season ticket packages, you're buying a ticket for every game, which is really good for sports teams because you got that ticket sold the whole season. You don't have to worry about every game by game by game. So that's a huge part of teams' revenues. And then the sponsorships, pretty obvious. You're paying for a sign in the arena, you're paying for the video board, you're paying the on-court promotions where people are doing, chicken eating contests and KFC or somebody sponsoring it or whatever, like that sort of thing. And then the group tickets, which especially for the minor, honestly, for almost all levels of sports, it's the way attendance is really, if you're selling out games, your group tickets are killing, or you got, LeBron or something on your team, which is hard. In the G League, you don't have LeBron, you got to have other ways. So you're going out to every company in town. Hey, HR person, do a company outing to a Mad Ants game. Hey, youth basketball league, come out and we'll give your kids a free ticket, buy a ticket. So that's what I was doing that first year. And it was really fun because you got to imagine, you're in this market, and you're just making all these random cold calls, you're meeting people, networking. And that's what I really like about sports in general, is you don't have a specific customer. Like you're interacting with so many different people in the community, whether it's, nonprofits, the companies, corporate companies, youth basketball leagues, coaches, and you build all so that's what I really like. Even now leaving the Mad Ants, I still keep in touch with all these people, and it helps in other aspects of life as well. But yeah, so that first season we just started going, and I think we had a pretty terrible season on the court, but it was just so much fun, learning and building it. And then I just stayed there as an account executive for I think 2 or 3 years, and then I got promoted. Eventually became vice president of sales and marketing, and then I was basically doing the same thing I was already doing, but then I was managing a couple of our salespeople. So I was still selling tickets, still doing sponsorships, season tickets, and the thing with minor league, which I really liked and would recommend for people trying to get into sports, is a good way to break in, is that you're wearing a lot of hats. Like, you're not just in a cubicle selling group tickets, which I'm fast forwarding here, but eventually the Mad Ants were bought by the Indiana Pacers. And so we interacted a lot with their people, and then we'd come in for sales training and stuff. And you had people there that you literally come in, all you're selling is group tickets, and you're in this cubicle and you're making 80 calls a day, which is fine. But with the Mad Ants, you might be doing that, but you're also helping set up for the game. You're taking the mascot to appearances. You're helping run a youth basketball camp. Just everything you can think of. Like, I can't even imagine the different things. Like, I literally there was a streak. So one of our big things to sell tickets was obviously like youth basketball is huge in Indiana, and getting like the upward basketballs, the YMCA basketballs, the different middle school teams, everybody to come to a game. Maybe they get to play on the court before the game or after the game or halftime, and they get a ticket. So we would, to promote that, we would take the mascot around, which is a giant red ant. If you've never seen them, look them up. It's pretty cool. The Mad Ant. And we would drive along, and me and another coworker, we take turns. One person would be the mascot. One person would be we called it the handler, that would go with the mascot so kids don't kill him, or attack him. And you'd be promoting these nights, like upward basketball would be like February 14th, Mad Ants game, you get a free ticket, and then the parents get discount tickets. And we would just go on Saturday mornings and literally go to like 4 different sites and take the mascot and then pass out flyers, talk about it at their games. And that's the kind of grind you also have to do to be successful, I feel like, in the minor leagues, because I feel like that's why we kind of ramped up like we did. Because we were not like winning on the court for the first few seasons, so it was rough. And then kind of started to get some momentum in 2012-13, made the playoffs, but we lost. And then the 13-14, everything kind of came together where the team was doing well on the court, but the business side, we were doing really well with sponsorships and season tickets groups, all the things I talked about. And we ended up winning the championship. And that just kind of put us on another level as far as when you go reach out to sponsors and take holders, you get that excitement around everyone who wants to be a part of a championship team. And we almost won it back to back. Then the next season we lost in the finals. And as he mentioned in the intro, we became a profitable franchise, and that's really hard to do. Like, we were not profitable. I think at the gate, we lost like $300,000 or $400,000 the first season, and luckily we had deep pockets of our ownership. And that's another thing I should mention. Had great mentorship with not only Jeff Potter, who was the president general manager, but his father-in-law, which is, hey, if you want to start a basketball team, have a rich father-in-law, helps. But he'll say that, so I'm not. But his father-in-law was John Ziglis, and he was the president of AT&T and the president CEO eventually of AT&T Wireless. So like a Fortune 50 company or whatever. And he would give us such great advice and help us. And not only, obviously, we knew we kind of had the time to not go bankrupt because we had some deep pockets, but to build up, but also just his experiences, and got to learn. I remember going to meetings with him my first season where I'm like, I don't think I appreciated it until later on, that I'm in a car going to a meeting with the hotel manager with the guy that sold a company for $41 billion like 3 years ago, because he sold off, it's a long story, but AT&T Wireless to Singular, and it was like the biggest cash transaction, and he was the guy that was in charge at the time. So getting to work with those type of people, and the NBA was great with they would send like consultants down. They have this program called Teambo, which everyone has a Teambo rep, and they basically share best practices. So there's a guy that was named Tommy Smith, and he's retired now, but he would come down and just show you the ropes, and just to have all that knowledge getting passed on was huge. So going back to the Mad Ants, so in 2015, the Pacers basically called actually Herb Simon, who owns the Pacers, called John Ziglis, the owner of the Mad Ants, and was like, my basketball team says I need a minor league franchise. Give me tell me your price, basically, because they had kind of made offers before, but it was really lowballed us, and they just weren't interested. And we were also just having a great time with the team, and Jeff, and it was like, why are we gonna sell? But then Herb Simon came back and asked that directly to John, and John named him a ridiculous price, and he said yes, and then they sold the team, which was great. But then I kind of knew that, okay, I don't really know what the future is going to hold for me. It was good. And I don't know if I should say this, but they had 1 year, they had given me some sweat equity in the team, which is a very small percentage. So I did well when we sold the team. Not like I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I made enough money. Like, I had some money. I was like, okay, this is a good thing. But I also knew a lot of my friends would be like, hey, the Pacers bought you. That's awesome. That's great. I'm like, well, I don't know if it is, because now we went from being a small business to this big part of this corporate conglomerate, which I didn't really find as much fun, because you got to jump through a million hoops. You got to do anything, approvals and stuff. But I wanted to, I loved the team. I wanted to see how it went. So stayed there for a couple more years, and it was good, and it went well. It was just tough being from that past ownership group and still being there, because they kind of want to do things their way, and we had ways I thought were successful that they didn't want to do anymore. And anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but stayed on for a couple more years, and we grew we were growing revenues, group tickets, season tickets, sponsorships, everything was going up. The challenging part, though, I will say with that, when you're owned by, the NBA club or the parent club, is you can't really control what the other side is doing spending wise expenses. So they obviously want to break even or make money, and that's great, except when they're doubling their expenses and they want you to double your revenues, like, well, what are we trying to do this whole time? We're trying to sell as much as we can. Like, we can't just magically pull another $1 million out of Fort Wayne. But so that was a little frustrating, but I just still had a great time there, and did a lot of fun things. And then in 2017, as I mentioned, I kind of forgot this was being recorded, but that's fine. So maybe I was something I would have said. But anyway, me and the another vice president, we were let go. Basically, I think they just wanted to be done with the old guard, and it was fine. It was actually, I was ready to move on, and it worked out really well. So I left there, and kind of was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And then Jeff Potter had sold the team as the majority owner, and he was also looking for the next thing. It was like, hey, what about an agency? I think I kind of was like telling him, I was like, I might try to get into this. Don't really know much about it. And luckily for me, Jeff, not only was he obviously the president and general manager of the Mad Ants, but before that, he had been a professional basketball player, played at Oregon. He'd also got his law degree, so he was an attorney, which most agents are attorneys. You don't have to be, but it helps because you got it's the MBA test to be an agent is pretty tough. Like, you got like attorneys fail it, like you got to be prepared. So basically we decided to partner up and form Potter Sports Group, PSG. And that was probably in 2018, which we really formalized it. And it is tough starting off an agency. Like, you see Jerry Maguire, you see the different, like the highlights of it. Like, it is not easy. Like, unless your best friend is the next LeBron, then it's easy probably. But it's if you don't know anybody, and luckily we did know some people because obviously we're in the industry, and we knew players and new coaches, and especially Jeff had, as a president and general manager, Jeff had worked with all these NBA teams on the G League level. So what happens in the G League, usually, if you're good, as far as the coaches and things, you move up into the NBA, like you move up into the parent club. So now we had all these contacts we made in the G League, now in positions of power. So it kind of helped us give a leg up. But the tough part is getting players, because when you go to a player and say, hey, I'm scouting you at, Ball State or wherever, and I'd really like you to join our agency. Well, what's the first question he's going to ask? Who else are your clients, right? And when you got nobody, it's tough. So, but luckily what we did have was that background I just talked about with Jeff, especially. Like, I really was just kind of at first was along for the ride, but what I could offer was, I have a sales experience, and that sales is recruiting. It's all the same thing. College coaches, they're recruiting players. I mean, that's so competitive now, and it's just like us. It's a very competitive industry, and you can get, hired and you can get fired really, really easily. So when we started off, we just, we reached out to college coaches, emailed them, sent out packets, made all this great marketing stuff. And we started to get some traction. Our first class of guys was 2019. And that's, we've kind of been off and running since then. And we actually just had our first, so this is how hard it is. So we started in 2019. We just had our first player sign in the NBA this year. So we have a lot of guys overseas. So like most of our guys are, Europe, Asia. We got guys in Japan, guys in Italy, guys in Germany, guys in Greece, all over the place. But this was our first year. We had a guy named Tajay Moore, who he played at University of Houston. He was in the G League last season with the Texas Legends, which are the Dallas Mavericks G League team, and did really well last year. Got signed back with the Texas Legends, the Mavericks team, G League team this year, and was doing well, but wasn't lighting it on fire like he had last year. And part of it was a different coach and different systems and stuff. So we tried to get him. We wanted to get him out of there. So we got a trade to the Portland Trailblazers G League team, which is called Rip City. And he played 2 games there, hadn't had a practice. And I think, I'm not sure if it was the GM or the assistant GM, was at one of the games, and he just killed it. And he made like a go-ahead shot. And he's just a super, look him up. He actually won the NCAA dunk contest in 2022. He's super athletic, really fun to watch, just like a defender, like somebody everybody wants on your team. And the GM is there, and I think texted Jeff after the game, like, he's killing it, and like a picture of him and then like 2 days later, he gets a call like, hey, we think we're going to sign him to a 10-day contract. And the next day they signed him. So the 10-day contracts, and this is all, even if you're a basketball fan, this can get complicated, but you're signing for 10 days and you get X amount of dollars based on your experience level. But you don't know if you're going to get another 10-day contract, and then eventually they sign you the rest of the year, or they could just give you one 10-day and you're back to the G League. So you don't know. But it's still a huge deal just to be get signed and be there. And then for us too, it gets, for our resume, what's, again, like, even though now we have a lot of clients and they're doing well overseas, if we have a guy that's like going to be drafted or potentially in that mock draft list, then he's on that there somewhere. When we're talking to him, what's he going to ask? He's going to say, who are your other NBA clients? And we're like, oh, we don't have anybody. So that was always tough. So now if we can have Tajay there and he sticks, that's huge, for us and for him obviously as well. But it's tough. Like, it is very sales. Like, I can't tell you how many, it's like a sales funnel. You start with 100 guys that you like as far as players that you're trying to get as clients, and then you're just trying to reach out to them. You're trying to reach out to their coaches, trying to reach out to their parents, mentors, and then you got 10 other people doing the same thing. So you got to stand out somehow. And I think how we try to stand out is, we try to be the anti-agent. A lot of times, if you look on like agents, like social media and stuff, it's a lot of guys standing on courts on their phone or on the bench, just very poser-ish type of stuff. We try to tell guys, like, we ran a G League team for 10 years. Like, we're not trying to do this to be around athletes. Like, we don't care about that. We want to do this because we like helping guys, get to the next level and keep going. And just like when I worked for the Mad Ants, even though I was on the sales side, I always would follow guys, careers after they left and keep in touch and hope for the best for them. So it was that's how it was like kind of a natural transition for me. And that's what I try to do with Jeff and the agency, is try to handle all the logistics, try to, handle our social media page, or, making highlights for things, because that's their guy's resume. You got to have their season highlights going all the time and their best games available, and just kind of keeping on top of everything. So it was just kind of a natural transition there for me. But yeah, this has been a really exciting, definitely an exciting week with Tajay. I mean, that was a big deal for us. But also, just, we have another guy in the G League right now, actually, which is ironic, for the Indiana Mad Ants. So the Mad Ants, I'm sure you guys know, but they moved down to Indy after it was kind of out of nowhere, or it felt like it, to the community, but from Fort Wayne down to Indy, and are playing at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And we have a player named Kyle Mangus, who is one of our clients, who is down there. He'd played 2 previous years overseas in Czech Republic and then Lithuania. And what's crazy about Kyle is he played at Indiana Wesleyan University. He's an NAIA guy, probably maybe the best player that's ever played NAIA, at least in the last probably 10 years or 15 years I've ever heard of. And I remember people tell me about Kyle, and I kind of would just overlook it. Like, in NAIA, it's just tough to translate, because even there, you can find really good NCAA people or players, but if they don't fit like the right things professional teams are looking for, like if you're like a 5'10" point guard but can't shoot, that's going to be tough for you, to keep playing. But with Kyle, I looked at his numbers and I'm just like, okay, this guy literally checks every box. He's averaging, 29 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, 7 assists a game, 3 steals, or whatever it was, 45% from 3, 90% from free. I'm like, okay, let's talk to this guy. So I got his number, and we started talking, and then we got a meeting, and, it's just crazy how it went. He killed it in the first year in Czech Republic. Then he went to Lithuania, did really well. And then he really wanted to play in the G League. He's got engaged to his girlfriend, who he met at Indiana Wesleyan, and wanted to stay in the States. And it's just, the G League can be very dangerous for players, because if you're not a guy that the NBA team is invested in, and I don't know how far I want to get into this, but let's say you get drafted or second rounder, great. Okay, you're in the NBA. There's also another level called the two-way contract, which each team has 3 spots for two-way contracts, where you can play X amount of games in the NBA and you get paid your NBA minimum salary. And then you also can play in the G League and you get double the G League salary. So you're an NBA player, but you're going back and forth a lot. And then there's an Exhibit 10 contract below that, where you get X amount of dollars, up to $75,000, and you're gonna go to the NBA team. So you're gonna go to the Pacers or the Bulls or whoever. Maybe you're gonna play in their training camp. Then you're gonna get cut, but you're gonna get cut, and you're gonna go to their G League team. But you're gonna make that extra between $0 and extra $75,000 plus your $50,000 G League salary. And so you're kind of on their system, you're on their radar better. So Kyle got an Exhibit 10 contract. I'm jumping way ahead here. So Kyle does really well. wanted to stay in the G League. And Jeff reached out to the Pacers and said, hey, Kyle's been doing well. He looks great this summer. Can we get him a try? He's like, actually, we have a tryout. We have another guy we want to work out. We can bring Kyle on at the same time. So Kyle went down, worked out with him. And this head scout is Ryan's car with the Pacers, called Jeff and was like, that might have been like one of the best workouts I've ever seen anyone have. Like, as far as he was just making every shot, doing everything right. And they immediately offered him an Exhibit 10 contract. So he got a big chunk of extra money plus his G League money. And then he's playing in Indianapolis, right? And he lives in Warsaw, Indiana. So, and he played at Indiana Wesleyan. So it's like dream scenario. And Kyle's been killing it. Like, he's been averaging. So we might have another guy. I mean, I think he will get, I mean, like pretty soon, get called up. And so we could have a huge year for us. And Kyle's a great guy too, and just to be so happy for him. But so we have that going on. And then we have guys overseas. And that's another interesting part of this is, we're here. It's like, how do you control the stuff overseas? How do you reach out to teams? And what you normally do with an agency is you partner with other agents who are, like we have a partner named Marco Rodolfi in Italy, who he has his own agency, but he has trouble. He can't get Americans because he doesn't, he can get, so he does have some clients, but it's harder for him where we can get the clients, but then it's harder for us to reach out to teams and communicate with teams. So he helps us place guys in Europe, and then we kind of split the commission type of thing. So we have, I think we have like 17 or 18 guys now playing overseas. And that's how you kind of do it, is you find these partners. And we have a different guy in Japan. We have a different guy in Turkey that we work with as a partner agent. And that's the other thing I was going to get into is, you can see like we're splitting commissions there and stuff. It is hard. This is a hard business. Like we didn't make really any money like for a while, and we're still not like we're killing it, And so if you want to do this, really, think hard, be all in on it. Or I'd also recommend, hey, you try to get into it when you're young, you don't have a family and stuff, because it can be brutal, and it's very competitive, very cutthroat, because there's agents that are Boy Scouts and are great and do everything by the rules, and there's guys that will undercut you and do everything. And you always have, like I guarantee, you get a player in the NBA, or you get just a good player overseas, there's going to be 10 other agents DMing them or texting them or getting, it's like, hey, that guy's not doing enough for you. Let's, come with us. And it's really easy to fire your agent. So you got to just also keep guys happy. It's not just about getting them jobs. Like, you got to keep that relationship. And I think that's, a strength for me is I stay in touch with people. I'm not just someone that you only hear about when good things are happening. And that's huge in any industry. But, so yeah, it's a brutal industry, but it's fun though. And it's like, I always go in and see like, hey, who's playing today? Maybe I'm watching a game in Romania. Maybe I'm watching a game in Italy or an NBA game now. It's been great. The Trailblazers, I've been staying up till midnight every night because they play on the West Coast and and he's also, he's a guy that when he's going to get his time, it's going to be at the end usually right now because he's new into the game. So you're staying up late, but it's a blast. And yeah. And then also another thing I'm involved with is the basketball tournament. Are you guys familiar at all with TBT? It's been around now for a while, but it's so it's a summer basketball tournament where they offer $1 million to the winning team. It's just like the NCAA tournament. There's 64 teams, and the winner take all. So if you lose in the first game, you get nothing. If you lose in the championship game, you get nothing. But if you win it, everybody splits $1 million. So in 2015, we had just won the G League championship. And I found out about this tournament because some guys I knew that played for the Madness had won it. The Notre Dame alumni team had won it the year before in 2014. So I was like, this tournament, I think I could win this thing with just take our championship team. So I recruited like 6 of our guys from our championship team, then found some other random guys that played for the Mad Ants in past years. And we made it all the way to the Final Four of this tournament. And then we ended up losing. We had to go to New York City and played at Fordham and on ESPN. And we lost in the Final Four, which is it's still brutal because we were just coast. You think you're going to win the whole thing, and then boom. And so I've been addicted to that now forever, and put a team in every year. And again, we're coming up in 2024. Will be like our 10th time in the tournament. And it's actually, I guess, it'll be our 9th time. But it's a fun thing though, because it's a tournament, but you're responsible as I'm the general manager. You have to recruit the players to play for you. So it's tougher than it sounds like, because you're trying to convince guys who maybe are making $200,000 a year playing overseas, or $300,000 or whatever they are, hey, come play for me in this tournament for free unless we win, but I'll cover your housing and your hotel and your airfare. So then with that, you can see there's already costs. There's airfare, there's hotel. So as a GM, you have to either pay for that, which I don't really want to do that, or you have to find sponsors. And like this shirt actually is a good example. So this is our coach's polo. So he sold this sponsorship to this Simplex Security, and he was a guy I met through the Mad Ants. He was a sponsor, past a big basketball fan. So you have to sell these sponsorships to cover the cost. And now TBT has decided this year that it used to be a free entry, but you had to cover everything. And then it's also invite only, they're picking the teams. It's not like if you just enter, you get in. But because we were a long-standing team, we would keep getting in, because what's happened is the alumni teams are way more popular. Like our team is just, basically a mercenary team at this point of professional basketball players. But there's an IU alumni team, there's a Purdue alumni team, there's a Maryland alumni team, there's, and this year we're actually going to play at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Butler, which will be really cool. But they've made an entry fee now, $10,000, plus you still got to cover all the travel. So now I'm like, oh God, so I really need to get on the sponsorship stuff. And because of my background, TBT has asked me to start helping some of the other teams, because with the TBT, everyone wants to do the basketball stuff. Like, you want to run the team, pick the coaches, pick the players, all that's all fun. It sounds like it's fun, at least. And it is fun, but there's just a lot of stress that goes into it too. But what they don't want to deal with is the business stuff, the raising the money and everything. So what I've said, hey, I can help you guys get sponsorship dollars and just treat me as like a sales rep, and I'll, as a commission or whatever. So what I was going to do, and I'm going to talk to everyone about, is if you guys are interested in like kind of I don't know if it'd be like a full internship, but if you want to get some experience in sports, I'm going to have some students helping me put together sponsorship decks for the TBT, for the different teams, or if you know people that maybe, if you want to like find some sponsors, you can, and I'll give you some, the commission too. Like, but it's a great way to get your foot in the door, because that's one thing I would really hit is, if you're trying to get into sports, the biggest thing I would recommend is do internships, because I can tell you, I'm kind of the exception that proves the rule, because I didn't do one, because I just didn't know you should. When I was in school, I didn't know I was going to work for a sports team. But how many times that we had interns, I see them from colleges come to the Mad Ants, and then now they're vice president somewhere, or they're of some sports team, or are they just everyone, they got the internship. You could just see them have success because you automatically have some connections in the industry. Like there's actually another kid that went here, Chris Kent. I don't know what year he graduated here, but probably like 2014-ish, because he came from Trine. He was an Angola kid too. And I had known one of the professors here that had reached out and said, hey, can you interview this kid for an internship? And I was like, sure. He came in, and it was a good interview, but I could tell he was more interested in the basketball stuff, because that's why I always tell people on the business side, don't come in here and think that you're just going to be hanging around the players and you're going to be doing this. Like, if you're doing that, you're probably going to get fired. Like, like you got to come in, like working, making calls, doing what it needs to do. He was more interested in the coaching side of it, and actually becoming a coach. So I was like, I don't really have anything that fits, but I can go talk to my friend who's the head coach and see if he has something. So at the time it was Steve Gansey was the head coach. So he's like, sure, he can come in during, some practices and game days and help out. And he did. And luckily he was the year we won the championship. So it went really well. And then he ended up coming back the next year and did like a full coaching internship. And he's killed it. He was, worked for the Bulls. He's right now, which is really ironic. He's an assistant coach with the Portland Trailblazers G League team, which is Rip City, which is where Tajay Moore was. So it was really funny that Tajay Moore, first of all, gets traded to that team. Chris Kent's there. And then also it's ironic, and this is how small basketball is. One of the assistant coaches on the Trailblazers used to be an assistant coach for the Mad Ants when I was there, and actually rented part of my house for a while, because they used to get stipends, and I would have an extra room, and I'd say, yeah, you can live here. So I had two people kind of in the system there. But Chris is a great story. Another guy from Trine. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Kent.
I knew the story, but I haven't met him.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, if you ever want him to talk, he's always great about stuff like that. And great guy. But yeah, small world. But back to TBT. So basically, I'm looking for some people if they want to help, kind of as an internship. It probably only take a couple hours a week, if that, and it'd be helping me target companies that might want to do sponsorships, or help me create presentations and things, and basically just sell these sponsorships for these different teams I mentioned, and help me there. Because I'm kind of right now, like I'm a one-man show, and I feel like I'm getting stretched pretty thin. So I think it'd be good to have some people helping, but also it's great experience, because, and also I'll say this, like a lot of people don't want to do sales because like when I was like I said before, I was doing the marketing degree, and the last thing I wanted to do was be a salesperson. Like it just didn't fit me at all. It terrified me the thought of making 80 calls in a day and just randomly calling people. And then what I ended up being, a sales rep, a vice president of sales marketing, and I ended up really enjoying it, and it worked out really well. And then it's also ironic that when I was working for the Mad Ants, I used to think, you know what, the worst job would be to be being a sales or being a sports agent because they have this bad reputation. It's everyone's slimy or whatever, and you're hounding people all the time. And what do? I become a sports agent or part of a sports agency. So no, so yeah, I would say don't discount like sales. I feel like sometimes it's a scary word, but it's also, if you want to get into sports, it's the easiest way to get your foot in the door because there's so many more positions than trying to like even just working like operations, like the game day stuff, like the fun stuff with like the mascot or the planning all the entertainment during the games. There might be one or two people even at an NBA team. There's usually two people and some interns. Like it's so hard to get your foot in the door, but sales, get your foot in the door, make the contacts, and then go from there. Kind of know what you want to do, but the people will help you if you're doing a good job. And that's why I always say, like, even as an intern, at like if you go intern with the Tin Caps over the summer, you might be, manning the kids' batting cages or whatever, but you're going to know the director of group ticket sales because you're there with them every day, and he sees you're doing a good job. You're doing other little things during the office and stuff. And now, when you're ready for when the next job becomes available, boom, you're at the top of the list. So just that's the key, just networking. And I think sometimes people don't even understand what networking is really. It's not just here's a business card, here's this. It's like, keeping people in touch with people, doing stuff for people, even though it doesn't maybe help you right now. But then later they're going to remember, wow, you did a great job as that internship. Like the kid, one of the guys that, his name is Phil Bagardi. He was an intern, and I got him he was an intern with the Tin Caps, and he was in charge of their birthday packages. So he would facilitate, someone would call in and say, hey, my kid needs 10 tickets, wants to do a birthday party at the Tin Caps. He would coordinate all that. So he was kind of still doing some groups ticket sales. And he came in and did a great job with us. And he got another job, I can't remember, and left after like a year or two. But now he's like the vice president of ticket sales of a minor league, I think in Charlotte, of a baseball team, and is just killing it. So I can't emphasize enough internships. Like if there's one available, even if it's here at Trine and just something in there, you guys have great facilities and stuff and selling tickets. Like just anything you can do there, I'd really put that over to getting into sports. But I feel like I'm rambling on out. Just any questions or anything that I didn't get into or. Yeah.
So when you're trying to get guys, when you're looking for, you're like scouting like, hey, this guy would decide. What are you actually like looking for besides like, oh, this guy's averaging 25 bucks?
Yeah. So with us, so we're, obviously we're still a smaller agency. So it's hard to compete with like the big boys like Priority Sports and Bartelstein's and those type of guys. So if someone's like a lottery pick that look at the mock drafts, like I'm not even gonna try because it's gonna be a waste of time unless it's like somebody that I personally know, like, okay, that was their son somehow, which that's, how often does that happen? Which we actually did have. Jaron Jackson Jr., his dad coached for the Mad Ants and we knew well, but we were just starting the agency at the time, and it would have been so stupid for him to sign with us probably. So that's not like anything I hold against him. It was just, but it has to be a situation like that for us to be this small and get someone like that. But so what I don't really focus on is the mid majors and look at the players there. And I kind of have a set category of, their stat, and it's positional, depends on, if, like I said earlier, if you're a 5'11" point guard and you're averaging 25 points a game, but you're shooting 28% from three and you're a volume shooter, like that's not going to translate really almost anywhere, so I just have a set stats, like if you're I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty, but like, let's say you're a big man and you're averaging, 10 or more points, 6 or more rebounds, 1 or more blocks, like stuff like that. But then also, what level of program are you at? And then, so I'm not a basketball guy by nature, as far as like I didn't play at a high level or I got cut in 7th grade, so I did not play at a high level. But I watch a lot of basketball, but I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say I trust my instincts like watching, but if I look at the numbers first and I'm like, okay, this is a guy who has my attention, then I go look at the film. Does everything match up? Or is it like this guy has a wonky, something's going on weird with his shot, or man, this guy's great, but he's 7 feet tall and doesn't rebound. Like what's going on there, or so I kind of have a checklist that I go through, and I try to go through each conference. And like I said, mostly stick to the mid majors. But there's guys, like we've got guys from bigger schools, but it's usually not their top guy. It's like their 3rd guy or their 4th guy. And you just got to look at, the bigs are really easy because there's not as many of us, supply and demand. So you can get a big man from a smaller school and have him he's gonna have a lot more interest or offers than just getting a random, like I mentioned, the guard that scores 30 points a game, but there's something off there a little bit. So there's a program called Synergy, or a website that all the NBA teams use, and all the G League, all the international teams, and they upload all their film there. So you can go there, and they also have analytics, and they'll tell you this guy's offensive efficiency is 95%, which is really, really good. Like, it's excellent. Like, you want to be in anything above, in the 70s or up. So that's like going back to, so Kyle Mangus is a great example. So I went, because I was really on the fence, and I just kept having people mention his name. I was like, he's NAIA. I don't know if that'll work. And then actually the guy that runs the Purdue TBT team, he was a friend, and he was like, I think we're going to get Kyle on our team. Mangus, you should really talk to him. I'm like, he's really good. I'm like, okay. And then I finally was like, okay, this is like the fourth person that's told me this. I'll look at. So I bring up his numbers on Synergy, and it was like the most ridiculous. I've never seen it. He was like the #1 efficient in college, because it covers all of, Division I, D2, D3, anyway, of college basketball, like in general. And like, again, like his numbers just blew off the page. And then when you watch him, it's like, okay, this guy isn't, because we've tried to have NAIA clients before, and it's like, again, like they'll score, you can't really trust the numbers just because of the competition level. And I'm not saying NAIA is great competition level, but you have to be so good. And that's where Kyle blew off all those little charts or little checklists that I have. And so that's kind of a long way to say how I do. I kind of look at the stats first, kind of make it guys I want to target. And then this is the funny thing. And originally when we were reaching out to all their coaches and trying to get, how do we get in touch with these players? How do we get in front of them? How do we get in front of their parents? And some coaches would get back, but usually like, well, wait till the end of the season. I'll put you in touch with them. We don't want to take any focus off. And some guys were like, hey, here's the guy's dad's number, whatever. But usually coaches, they care about their program. They don't want to have agents meddling in, and some guys are helpful, some aren't. I can't tell you how many times I went to way after a game, drove 3 hours to talk to a coach, hoping to get in touch with a player. And the guy stood me up, or I had to like grab him as he's coming out. And I'm like, oh my. And there was one player I went to meet, and I think it was Eastern Michigan. So it was like a 2.5-hour drive. Had been talking to the guy via text and stuff, said he was going to meet me after the game. Never came out, never said a word after, ghosted me. I'm just like, that was 5 hours. So that's the type, especially when you're starting off, it can be brutal. And then you think about it, it's like the guy that didn't even end up doing that much as a pro. So it's like, I just wasted all this time. But I'm trying to lose my train of thought here. But yeah, that's kind of what I do. And, this is where I was going with. So like the best way I found now to get in touch with the players is just to go on. We have an Instagram page, message them on Instagram. And it's like a funnel thing where message 100 guys that you're interested, you get 10 responses. And I have a target. Like, I'm not just randomly shooting off messages. Like, I know who I want to talk to, but that's what's funny to me. Like, we did all this, we had all these materials, these folders we made, and mailing out stuff that first year, and we got somewhere with that. But it seems so much easier just to social media. Like, hey, now they don't always respond, and to get in touch with them is the tough part. And now that we were more established, like we have guys that went to certain schools that you can be like, hey, give me this guy's number, give me this number, or like, you just build relationships doing this. Being, like I said, basketball's small, so you start to find out ways to get in touch with people easier than that. But so I don't know if that answered it decently, but any other question? Yeah.
So, like, what's the biggest difference in what you can and can't do if you do or don't have your law degree?
Well, really, it's nothing. It's the law degree. I think it just makes it easier. You're more prepared for like the tests. Like, you're going to know, because it's a lot of negotiating contract law and stuff. So you can definitely, you don't have, like, there's lots of agents that don't have law degrees for sure. I think it just, like, for me, like if I went to get my MBA certified, like it would probably be like intense studying for like 6 months, and then still like, I don't know if I'm gonna pass this thing or not. And I don't know if I really even have an interest in doing that. Like, I think I like kind of doing it with Jeff, and we kind of have our different roles and everything. But yeah, you don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to be anything. But then the tough part is then going to the players later and be like, okay, I want to be your agent, you should hire me. I don't have a law degree, I never worked in basketball, like, so what are you going to do for them? That's going to be the problem. And a lot of times there's attorneys who will almost do the agency stuff on the side. Like, they're attorneys and they still have an operating practice, but then they have some clients. But mostly like the big time, like there's probably like 3 agencies that have 85% of the NBA players. And I don't know, that number might be low actually. So it's tough for the small guys like us to kind of get our foot in the door. But yeah, you don't have to have your law degree. There's definitely, I think it just makes it easier for you, and you're more prepared basically for the job, I would say. Yeah.
You still able to work with some of the agency stuff and like the roles of an agent under kind of Jeff, because he's got that license with.
Yeah. So basically, so I actually went, so right when we first started it, and this is actually kind of a funny story. So FIBA, so that's the governing body of like Europe, professional basketball and everything, and they have their own certification you have to have. So I looked into it, how to become, because I was originally going to do this on my own, how to get my FIBA license. And there was like, okay, we have twice a year, we have a test that you have to come take in person, and there's a little course and everything. And it's like, I forget how much it was, like $1,000 or something. And I think this was in Miami. Yeah, it was in Miami. And so I'm like, okay, I got to take this. And I go down there, and in the testing, the material they gave me, I was like, this seems like too easy, or like the booklet, and I like this. So I go there, and they have like a little pre-course or pre-test course that everyone's there like the day before, and like, okay, this is where we're gonna go over. And the guy's like, look, this is gonna be an open book test. There's 25 questions. I'm about to go over with you what the questions are gonna be right now. So basically, and so we go the next day, we take the test. It's super easy. And like I had to look up stuff and read stuff and understand everything. And I'd studied a lot for it, just prepared, not want to fail. But basically it's a cash grab where they want money to make sure everyone's not just doing it. Like you guys could go be a FIBA agent tomorrow, the next time that thing is, if you just studied this. But Jeff, luckily, we actually kind of wasted our money on it, because I didn't even getting my FIBA license, because Jeff, as an attorney, you basically get a free FIBA license if you can show that you're an attorney. And which we found out, and I was like, hey, Jeff, do not do this, like save the money. I shouldn't have even done this, because I'm not going to get my FIBA license, because I don't need it, because I'm working with Jeff. But yeah, like you said, so I'm still doing a lot of the same things, like talking to teams or talking to the people. A lot of times I'm doing more like the legwork stuff, where Jeff's doing the negotiating, or like the direct dealing, like the contract, or going over the contracts and things like that. Where I'm the guys are like, hey, I need help with this, and I'm trying to figure something out for them. But yeah, that was just really funny. And I got a perfect, I think I was one of 2 people that got a perfect score at 25 out of 25, which I don't know how anyone really missed too many. But and a lot of it was, I think it was younger people that I would have said, don't do this unless you're doing it on behalf of a company that agency you're already working with. Because if I would have done it on my own, I probably would have been done in like very shortly, because I just wouldn't have had the ability to recruit people, because people are going to look at my background like, how are you going to get me signed? Like now I feel like I can do it, because we've had some experience. But yeah, I still have a t-shirt they gave me for free after I was one of the perfect scorers, and I'm always like, okay, there's my award for that. But yeah.
This is kind of fascinating. I don't know if I've ever really kind of realized that or heard that. Like, there's still an opportunity to get involved, like on that agency side, even if you're not negotiating a contract.
Yeah.
There's so much to that role there.
Yeah.
Still working it.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, I try to do as much so that Jeff doesn't have to like I run all of our social media stuff, which, and even for agencies in this day and age, because you're showing off, like you're posting highlights, and you want people to see it, obviously, but also the players like showing what they're doing, especially if you're overseas and no one can see what they're doing over, from home, and you're sharing the highlights, and then also that's their resume. So like I keep all their film compiled. So if some team like in Italy is like, hey, we like Sam Sessoms, give me it. So I have right there, I can go, here's his highlights up to date. Here's his 2 full games he's done really well. And you got to kind of stay on all that stuff. And yeah, and just anything like in the summers, we bring guys in. So our rookies, we'll have a rookie class of guys. So last year we had like 8 guys as rookies out of college, and we bring them to Fort Wayne, and we have like a month where they train and they prepare. And it's during the time where their NBA teams are having pre-draft workouts. So the guys are working out with our trainers, but then they might get like Celtics are like, okay, we want him there in 3 days, and he's going to go there, and there's going to be 5 other guys, and then they go and they compete against each other in front of all their personnel. And they're trying to make you're trying to make a summer league team, where obviously you're trying to get drafted. So I help coordinate all that with like, hey, we got to have 4 apartments, they got to be furnished, we got to make sure guys can get to the gym every day, what times are we going? I kind of coordinate all that, our training program with our trainers, make sure everything goes smooth there. So that's like another aspect of it that I didn't really even talk about. And that's actually one of the most fun parts of it. And most agencies will farm that out. They'll sign a guy and be like, okay, go to Impact in Vegas, this training facility out there for a lot of pros use. But we like to do it internally because of Jeff's background, and we have all these contacts. Like we have former Mad Ants players come back and be the trainers for our guys, the guys that have had success being a trainer or coach, and they work out these guys for that summer months to get them prepared. So even if they don't get signed in the NBA, you're going overseas. Now you're in good shape, right? When you go over there, you're learning from these pros. But that's a fun part of the job for sure. Anything else? Anybody? But yeah, I appreciate you having me. And I'll leave my business cards if anybody's interested in either the TBT stuff, the helping out with that, or if you just have any questions or anything like that. But I guess I'll just leave you with, if you're trying to get into sports, definitely do as many internships as you can, and don't be like too worried about what exactly the internship is. Just if you're working for a team, and I would put over, the minor league teams, a lot of times they're easier to get in, your foot in the door, and you're just going to see more things, and do more things and get to have more responsibilities than if you went to like an NBA, an NHL, MLB team. And then just make sure you do a good job, and just, keep in touch with people, and then let people know when you're ready to, when you are looking for a full-time job. Now you hopefully have that network that you've built that you can reach out to right away. So, and then you get good references on your resume that, hey, this, like I always say, now I'm backing up a little bit. Like when I was hiring people at the Mad Ants, if you could say you sold a single ticket at an internship or a sponsor or anything, that was like immediately my eyes are open. Like, okay, I'm looking at you a lot harder. So that's why I always try to tell people to get those internships and do like real stuff, or even if it's for your school. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's opportunities there as well. So. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Be sure to check out our next episode on February 23rd as we talk with Carlos Ames and Sam Bakken from the Chicago Fire Inside Sales Academy. As always, we'd like to say a special thank you to producer Josh Hornbacher for his work behind the scenes. This is the Center for Sports Studies podcast, broadcasting from the Trine Broadcasting Network. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Center for Sports Studies podcast on your favorite podcasting platform, and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you heard. For more information about the Center for Sports Studies, please visit trine.edu. Also, be sure to like the Trine Center for Sports Studies on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and X @Trine CSS, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.